There's always this brief pause in the recordings, and this thing is supposed to record to play a video, and then it dumps as you just saw, it dumps immediately to us, and then it looks like we're talking, but then I go back and see the recording, and there's like this 1 or 2 seconds where I'm like this. So, I don't know what to do about that.
I need to go watch the beginnings. I just kind of skip ahead usually a few minutes to see what it's like, but I need to watch those.
That's good. I think YouTube used to have this ability to edit the videos you put up there. I forget if they still do. You could edit the beginning and the end. But
you know who would know that would be my 11-year-old. I know.
Oh,
I'm sure he knows that.
You got a budding YouTube star there?
Budding lots of things, but yes, that's probably
lots of hopes.
That's
very very ambitious. Well, speaking of hopes, today I thought we would go back to the build versus buy platform discussion. Now I think we talked about this several episodes ago. I updated this paper we have. Look, I've got a printout here because I was taking notes on it. The upside down economics of DIY PaaS. You can tell I'm old because it says PaaS, but whatever.
What is it supposed to say instead? What's the new buzzword for PaaS?
I think you would just say platform.
Platform.
Especially if, as this is unfortunately a black and white printout, but especially if you had this limited space right here, you would say platform. Although maybe you would just put a return there or a carriage return, and you would move this text down to here, and then you could spell it out. I think what people do is they say they'll say platform, and they'll say that some people call that an internal developer platform, or it used to be called a PaaS, and then they just say platform. At least that's what I do.
I won't mention the customer. I tried that at a customer referring to it as an IDP, and they got wrapped around the axle because it wasn't a portal. So they thought,
yeah.
It's like, okay. I mean, yes, okay.
And that was, I think maybe that was 2.5 or 3 years ago. IDP changed from internal developer portal,
right,
to internal developer platform.
That's right.
And we used to license a paper from Gartner going over the portal IDPs, which is pretty good. And then around the time when Humanitech declared that DevOps was dead, I think it turned from portal to platform. So that's like 2.5, 3 years
Perfect
ago.
sense.
Yeah, but I don't know. The IDP sounds silly, but I guess if you know, you know. So anyhow, this platform, this paper, Tony.
I haven't gone through it all, but thanks for sending it over. I'm gonna.
That's okay.
I'm going to definitely go through this. So
I mean, it's a gripping read, so you want to save it up until you need just a jolt of intellectual running through the forest.
All right.
But and also, I actually just updated this paper. We've had this paper for a long time, and there's several of the people noted at the end who started it, and I kind of just fiddled around with it. But it goes over 7 things that are, as it says, pitfalls, and one of them, the one that speaking of budding YouTube artists, have you noticed that the people in YouTube, they always say, guys, honestly, or to be honest. I forget if I did this when I was a kid, but when I watch the kids' videos, there's always people talking about how honest they're going to be, or honestly this. They say it all the time, which is...
what I hear is low key and no cap, which I think means the same thing, but I'm not sure. But yes.
But so to use that phrase, to be honest, I thought we should go over what, to be honest, is the part that seems I have the least experience and confidence in. But I just kind of continued the work, and I messed around with it in a spreadsheet, and sure, it makes sense once you break things down in numbers. But the numbers are so high, and it's so not variable. I don't know, and that is the cost of building your own platform sheerly by head count of the people building it, and of course, we advocate buying a platform, as so many people do. And in our situation, and of course, we want to point out that buying it is overall cheaper than staffing it. That's not always the conclusion you want to get to, because I was talking with someone at a large bank. This is on Monday, and they actually walked me through. I mean, this is a very big bank. They were like, "Yeah, we always try to do ROI studies, and they're impossible, right? Like there's so many, like people will say like, well, what about this? And what about not that? And what about this? And so this person was saying like, so we try to focus on, he blessedly, as they say, didn't say the word outcome, but he was like, we try to focus on outcomes, right? Like, and make the speed that it takes or the effectiveness of doing something, because you can always like mess around with ROI numbers. So
yeah, I to put a little bow on that, maybe that's another topic, but the joke I always make is if you take all of the projects that people are pitching and you look at the ROI, it ends up being like 5 times more than what your company spends. And you're just like, well, where is all this coming from? Like we should be making money like off of this stuff.
right. So you know, all of that disclaimer aside, right? I thought I would get your reflections, having, you know, run a platform at a place and talking with people over the years and your peers and everything, and just kind of like you know, thinking about the modeling and what it looks like, you know, things like that, and how you know, again, with the disclaimers aside, how you would think about going through this kind of thing. And so and so what I did is I cleaned up, which is to say, made more readable, one of the spreadsheets that I used for this, and let me share that with you.
All right, look at this,
and the viewers, and I'll explain what's going on, and then we can discuss it, or you know, you can interject whatever you feel comfortable with. Let me make sure there's nothing embarrassing on my screen. I didn't do that part. Okay. You can see that. That's fine. Nothing terrible on there at the moment. Let me get rid of this, actually. All right. So now I'm going to share my screen, and you'll see. Don't worry, I'm narrating what I'm doing. Eventually, we'll get there. I'll add this. Share a screen. Allow to share screen. Okay.
The payoff there would be great, Cote. This is
share it.
All right.
There we go. So, what you have here, if that is, maybe I can make this even bigger. No, that's not good. Nope.
Oh, look at that.
That's a little better. Yeah, we'll go with that. So here, there's 2 charts. One you have, and again, this is assuming that you're like building and doing the ongoing maintenance of building a platform. And really, this could be just for anything, but you know, whatever. And here we have like, all right, let's assume we need 1 team to build a platform, versus like, as we'll get to, you probably need multiple teams to build a platform. And so the way I charted this, I don't know if this is the best way, but I wanted to have like a range of like of the costs that you would have. So you can see that there's like, if you had 1 team of 3 people, and this is cumulative, so the total amount that you paid after 5 years. And then if you had a team of 8 people, you can see what it costs over time. And that's basically just 1 team. So the assumptions here are, what are the assumptions I made? How come? Oh, right. I did a very low annual salary, and I didn't do full overhead. You know, you also have to pay for, like, if you're in the US, they're matching 401k. You got to pay for like some coffee, even if it's, you have to pay for it, they've got a discount. So you've got overhead, but whatever, you know, we could, as we used to say when I worked in M&A, we could do the fully loaded amount, or we could just simplify it.
That's right. I got you. So this is labor. We're looking at labor only.
Yeah, just pure salary, like you know,
gotcha.
and pre-tax salary, not all the others, whatever. And so, you know, you just multiply this off. As the lower is if you assume you have 3 people, then it's, you know, $375,000 a year, and then of course it's cumulative, so it just goes up. And then the higher amount, if you had 8 people on the team, you can see that charted out, and that's it. I mean, this is. It took me longer to figure out how to get this chart to look right than to think about what's going on here, as it were.
Yeah. So I got you. So if I'm looking at this correctly, what I'm assuming is the chart on the left is a small team of people to run a platform you probably purchased, and then on the right we
it is. So, well, it could be that, yes.
Okay.
You can swap them back and forth, right? So you could say, So yes, that's actually the better assumption is like, because there's a second thing. One, you would say like, okay, so on the left, let's say we have a small team of people who are woefully underpaid, but that's okay. We got a good deal, right? And like that's just your team from 3 to 8 people to run a platform, and then over here you have, so on the right side you have either 3 to 7 teams to like build and maintain the platform, and
Right.
maybe one of those teams are the people running it. I hadn't really even considered that option, but and that since these are both generic, you could also use this chart on the left. You could say, well, I only need one team to like build
Yep.
it, so you could
Right.
compare it to that, and so forth and so on. But that's the basics of the charting, right? And of course, I charted it out. I don't have a master's of business in accounting or finance, so I don't know if I'm doing these things correctly. But I made it cumulative pay because you're often, when you're making a buy decision, you're thinking about like the total bill of what it is. So the total amount that you pay over years, that's what you would want to compare to labor, as you say,
Right.
for building it. So that's the setup,
Okay.
and I thought if you wanted to, we can play around with these numbers, do all sorts of things with our pretty charts, but that's the kind of thinking.
Yeah. No, I think this definitely resonates, and I think this is my own personal experiences can attest to this. And I think for those that are kind of viewing, I think what's not very clear here visually is the number on the right, even though the graphs are similar, is seven times higher than the one on the left, which and this is what I will say overall. So every time I engage in these conversations and from my own experiences, I think the overall theme is um, team, organizations completely underestimate all aspects of this, from complexity to budget to time, to what it's, the features it's going to have, and so forth. And I've had multiple conversations with customers, and I know this is just labor, but when you're looking at all-in costs, of course, over adult beverages and nothing publicly, but I've had 2 customers in the last 2 years give me numbers that are closer to 80 and 120 million, like all in, over 3 to 5 years to build a platform. And even then, it's still not as user friendly, feature complete, robust. So it's still lacking features. So I think that these could be good for labor, but I think all in, I think the costs are much higher.
Right, and uh, and of course there's the un- uncostable things, as you were getting at, right? Like, are you getting all the features that you would be paying for otherwise? And do you have, like I was saying, I was talking with someone, like, do you get all the new features that come along and new things that you would want in a platform? Of course, like AI nowadays, and then also just updates to what you have and things like that. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, with it's hard to load that into an analysis or something. I don't know what you do with that, but at least you have this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very nuanced thing. It's also very complicated. We've tried, and we've come up with some pretty detailed models in the past. I think one of the things that makes it challenging is when you do a platform or PaaS or whatever we're calling it nowadays. It does such a good job of sort of obfuscating the costs from multiple P&Ls, and so it kind of gets all combined into a single line item. But when you're internally at a company and you're looking at, TCO and other things, you're not realizing that it is a P&L spread across probably eight organizations or 8 P&Ls. Like if you're looking at infra and security and multiple lines of business. And so I think it gets very difficult for companies. I mean, it's difficult for us that do this for a living, but I can imagine, and as a customer internally, it's very difficult to model this correctly, and it's one of the reasons that I think they end up underestimating a lot of the cost.
Well, so talk about that more, because what you're saying, I would think that was just an issue of not being able to show the value of what you're doing. Like if you've got developers spread out through your organization, it's hard to it's hard to say like, well, 500, we had 500 applications and I don't really know how much revenue each of those brings in. But it sounds like you're saying something different about this spreading it out.
Yeah, I mean, you can sort of set aside ROI for now. And what I mean by that is, the most classic example that I see that recurs over and over is when customers do a DIY solution, which is typically Kubernetes based, for example. So they'll have an internal, shared services, centralized platform team, and they will work with security, they'll work with infra, networking, and so forth, right? So maybe they have 3 or 4 of those teams covered. But one of the costs that goes unnoticed and unaccounted for is the number of, we'll call them ops people or run people or SREs in all of the lines of business. So if you can imagine and this is happening at a customer, and they have around 20 to 30 people per line of business that is
Ah,
needed in addition to what they had previously, just to run and kind of manage all of the overhead with this platform.
I see what you're
Platform.
saying. Right,
Yeah,
right. So in this instance, because you don't have like a fully featured functional platform that automates a lot of stuff, to offhandedly to put it concisely, like you're spreading out some of the operations management stuff to your, let's call them users, to your customers.
yeah, yeah.
So those teams, I'm just repeating what you're saying, but those teams have to either spend time or hire to have people take care of that operations stuff. Which you remind me, I was talking with someone and they were saying, for some Kubernetes installs or like stuff they had done, people had ended up needing to hire more like dev ops people to like manage it kind of at team levels. Just exactly what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and I think what's even scarier about this, if I were, a CIO or a CFO or CEO, is it goes unreported. And the reason why it goes unreported is, you can imagine, from the platform team, they're reporting the cost of the platform. Like, hey, this is what it costs to build the platform. But all the lines of business are reporting their costs as the cost of building apps. And so what's
Right.
actually happening, though, is that you have platform related costs, which are not related to business value or building apps, that you're multiplying and repeating across your lines of business. And they're not incentivized to report on that, as you can imagine, right? Because they're being managed by headcount and budgets, right? And so if they all need 20 more people per line of business, like, to build apps, like, that's not necessarily something that they want to give up once they have.
Yeah.
And so, like, as a CEO, you probably don't see this until you dig into the numbers. And so that's why, for any salespeople that are out there, I think it's really important to have the conversations at the right level to illuminate some of these things. And to be fair, I think, even with companies and lines of business, it's not nefarious. It is just, it's unclear. And I think once they see that clearly, then I think an aha moment happens. And like, hold on, what are we doing? So if you have 6 lines of business, for example, and you have 20 to 30 people extra per line of business to manage the overhead because of the lack of automation and so forth. I mean, that's a huge number. That's 180 people, or 150 people. And if you look at your numbers that you came up with, that's probably closer to hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right, right, right. I mean, even if you assumed some fractional thing, I mean, you could play around with models and you could say, uh, so let's assume that you need zero point 0.5 people per team extra, right?
Right.
Like if you need that, and it's just numbers you're multiplying out. But that's interesting that there's the hidden is kind of a scary word, but there's unaccounted for
Unaccounted for.
unaccounted for operations expense.
Yes, or misappropriated or mislabeled, because again, it shows up as an app dev cost, and it's really an ops run cost.
Right, 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 right. And what do you in your what do you think those extra people end up doing? Like what tasks do you
Yeah,
find they do?
yeah. So I think with when I've whiteboarded this out and done these kind of value stream maps, I think where it ends up happening is a platform sort of accounts for much more of the stack. And so I think when most of these teams are building this, if you take our platform, for example, um, it, what we deliver is probably a layer or two higher than what a shared services team would deliver on a DIY kind of Kubernetes based
Right.
platform. And what I mean by that is they're doing like cluster as a service or namespace as a service typically. And so that's what the team gets. But then there's so many other things they have to fill in once they have that a typical platform would do for them. And so like that's where one of those things comes from. But the other thing comes from, just managing, YAML and images and like security and like there's a whole bunch of other stuff. So I think it's a combination of those two. One is where it is in the stack, and the unit of thing that gets delivered is lower on the abstraction level and the stack layer. And then in
Right.
addition to that, there's not as much automation and there's more sort of toil and overhead.
Right, that makes sense. And then how do you think? I mean, for this unaccounted for, or whatever we wanted to call it, like how do you think about the work needed to interact? I don't have my words at the moment, but to work with other things like databases and like other systems that you have, because that's another thing that a platform can do for you is just like the platform team talks with the database people, more or less, like to make it easy,
Right.
self-service to get a database versus not, versus kind of leaving that up to individual application teams.
Yeah, I would say it's always an additional cost. It's always an and cost. And I would say what I mean by that is that depends on the how they're running their data services, which could be separate from the platform or even separate from a DIY. And so I guess what I would say is I don't think it could ever be better, but it could certainly be worse. And
Right.
at best, it would be about even, but in my experience, it's almost always worse.
Yeah, yeah. I guess. What do you think those like clusters of services things are? Like, I always think of databases because that's straightforward. But do you think, like, whether it's industry specific or like just generic technology, like what do you think those other teams are?
Oh, you mean on the LOB side or on the
Or
platform
or
side?
like,
Or
so if we were to say, okay, one of the services you have is databases, and I think like in a well, I guess I'm asking because I don't exactly know off the top of my head. But like another set of services we might have is like event systems, and then another set of services we might have is like, well, we might have like access to inference, like AI stuff. That could be a
right.
set of
I see what you're
services.
saying. Yeah. Yeah. So from that perspective, I would not try to necessarily categorize any of them. And what I mean by that is the database team could be a customer of the platform team, similarly as a line of
Mm,
business could be. And so that could be the clusters. But I think it brings up a good point. And one of the things that I would say in the underestimation, the complexity is what I see a lot of customers doing is by doing this cluster as a service or name service as a service namespace, they there's this lack of multi-tenancy, I think, also makes the cost more, and a lot of customers do it
right.
because it's just easier to do everything dedicated, like have a dedicated space for everything, but that actually drives up costs as well. And the reason why they do that is because it's simpler for them to deliver sooner to the customers, but it actually ends up driving the cost, and it ends up being something they usually don't go back and retrofit later. So, but yeah, to the earlier question, I would say it doesn't matter. Like for us, we had a database team. Like actually, we had multiple database teams. We had a messaging team. We had a logging team. If they could be customers of the platform the same way that an LOB could. So the same way that someone would do a tool rental app, someone else may be getting clusters for databases for other LOBs as well.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Like that. That's going all the way back. I think that's the origin of like the portal part of IDP. Is
Right.
like, from one angle it looks like everyone's going to a portal, to
Yes.
do something. Which, as a total side note, I don't know about you, but I think I've been around IT stuff long enough now that whenever you see the word portal, you're like, don't use that word.
Run for the
It
hills.
never, yeah, like you could use a different word for a perfectly fine technology, but the word portal is never going to survive. Like
No.
it's not good. Like, but it's very attractive. In fact, I bet there's like a 10-year window on kind of people careering or aging out of like IT, where people are like, what, we should call this a portal, and then they go through it. But that's always good to keep in mind. Well, on a related topic, let's see if I can make this specific enough to have any interesting conversation out of. There, I've been I was writing up something the other day. I forget even what it was, but it came down to like one of my more fascinating things is like when someone says you've got to change the culture of the organization, right? That's how you're going to get to things. And speaking of being around a long time, I've been thinking it seems like in a technology conversation, if you get around to if someone says you need to change the culture, that seems really close to failure. in, in the sense of or kind of predicting failure, in the sense of there's not that much if you're building a platform, even if you're a software developer, not that they're more magical than platform and operations people, but like if you're in IT, there's not really too much you can do to change the culture except in IT, right? And even then it's very difficult. And so I don't know. It seems like a very, very difficult thing to like start saying you need to change the culture around. And now I'm remembering the context that this came up when, in people talking about like, is AI worth it? Like, are enterprises getting returns? And I think the stage we're at, I'm going to call it ROI, is a very loose thing. The stage we're at with like the new technology ROI cycle, right? And you saw this with digital transformation, probably with mobile apps, maybe even email and digital calendar scheduling back in the 90s. But like there's a stage you get at where it's like the technology is fine, but you've got to change the culture.
Right.
And so but in this case it was even more difficult than the platform stuff. It was like the whole organization, how people use it outside of IT, they've got to change that culture. And I was thinking, oof, even at the CIO level, this is kind of like, maybe it's not a death sentence, but it's not cool, right?
Yeah.
Changing the culture is not IT's responsibility, and they don't have the tools to do anything about it.
Yeah. It reminds, maybe tell me if this is similar, but I remember early days when I was more into the sort of agile thing than the platform thing. And I'm guilty of this. I remember, there's nothing wrong with agile. You're doing it wrong. Like agile is great. Everyone's just doing it wrong. I remember when we brought the platform on, I did, I think we had one of these Cloud Foundry Day things, and I was in Denver, I think, talking at one of them. And I think fully on accident, someone asked me what I thought about the platform and from a technology perspective. And I think what I said was something along the lines of, what I like about it is it sort of takes technology off the table as an excuse for culture. And what I meant by that was, I think so many people try to bring in new technology as a means to changing the culture, and it just doesn't happen that way, obviously. And I think one of the things, we had a fantastic leader. I won't mention his name, but and to this day, I love this guy, and he used to say all the time, like, you can call it whatever you want, agile, you can call it extreme programming, whatever. He's like, at the end of the day, I just want to spend more time, doing value add software things and less time everything else. And I think with the platform, it's very similar, is that you want, like, you have to fix the people problem. And at most companies where I see this culture thing being, is that everything is not driven as a business related concern. And so what I mean by that is, like, we'll bring in a technology for technology's sake versus having a business driver that demands it or justifies it. which is why I think we get into these cycles of like fluffy, ROI conversations where the ROI ends up being, 5x everyone's combined budget. And it's
Yeah.
like, so I think like it's, we're making technology decisions and trying to shoehorn them into a business justification. And it should be the other way around. Like we should have a very clear business justification driving our desire to go out and get new technology for that case, right? And I just don't think we do it that way in most organizations.
So I guess in that regard, that is, well, a lot of that is a interfacing or intra like IT department thing, right? Like you can change the culture of your own silo. To put it one way, right? Like anytime you have to do cross silo stuff, that's like difficult, right?
Right.
And but you can look into your own heart and see if you want to change the culture around. Like you were making me think of this when you were mentioning, if you have these these extra ops people in your development teams or whatever other teams, because the platform doesn't do that. And then people want to hold on to those people, usually, right? Like that's sort of like a cultural thing, right? Like
Yeah.
they want to do it because to take the it's this is 2026. We're supposed to be upset at systems, not people, which is fine. And like the people behave this way because the system, which is to say the culture, somehow rewards it. Right. Or
Yeah.
to use your phrasing, it could be worse.
Right. And this brings up another point too, is when the LOBs have these people doing these things, it's actually seen again from a cultural perspective as something positive, because like, oh, the business is taking on more of the concerns, right? Like they're in control of more of the stuff. Like one of the things that you hear about platforms is they're opinionated and it doesn't like sort of meet the business, where they are all the time. And and so like the LOBs always have this weird, not weird, but I think it's natural instinct that like we're special and we need this, right? And so, and we can deliver this faster. And so when they take on more of that work, in some ways the culture rewards that. And at a sort of locally optimized level, I can see why. But if you're a CEO and you're looking at this, or a CFO or CIO, it's like you're like, hey, like everyone, like why do we have 30 people from 6 different orgs all doing the same thing? Right. Like,
Right.
and it just doesn't make sense.
And I guess that would be a you could say there's a cultural thing. I don't know what you call it, a principle. And one of them you might try to have is like, there's probably some better way of phrasing it, but like, let's do the least amount of work possible.
Yeah,
Right?
like the least amount of work possible to deliver the business thing that's needed. Like
Right.
that should be the culture.
And so you would want to instill like you could word that as like, let's be efficient or productive, but like it feels like the tangible thing is like, why are these people doing so much work? Right?
Yes,
Like
yeah.
like we should have less work happening. What's the least amount of work we can do
Right.
to accomplish that? And that is, I mean, that's scary if you're an individual, because we all know, well, most of us know that scene from Office Space, right? What would you say you do around here? We're the team of people who are looking who to fire. But that would be another part of the culture, is like, because we don't want you doing crazy work.
I actually, you brought up, or you just reminded me of something, and I just had this conversation about 3 months ago, and it is culture related, and I think it is, because we have a customer who's been running our stuff for a while, and then obviously there's like, hey, maybe we should be doing something with Kubernetes, we should build our own platform, and all these conversations happen in all these companies. And I think that what the interesting thing is that as a traditional like infrastructure company that's not has a culture of being sort of customer facing, or a customer advocate or product mindset sort of thing, this notion of doing a cluster as a service is actually enticing to them, because there's this they don't have to engage with their customers. It's like, we can just give me a ticket. I'm going to give you a thing, and now my hands are clean. And now, like, whatever issues that you have with this cluster, it's up to you, to your group, to go figure that out.
Yeah.
And culturally, that's enticing to both organizations. So this shared services company that doesn't want to be a product mindset, because they don't want to deal with customers and what are their needs, and then building to that. They want to wash their hands and just be kind of an infrastructure ticket based, like, move on to the next thing. And then similarly, the LOB culture is like, yeah, we want to take on more of our stuff. We want to be more responsible. And so, like, it's actually this double-edged sword culturally, where both groups are locally optimizing for their own sort of desires. But when you look at the macro level, it is excruciating. Like, it's just the costs are off the chart. Like, it's really awful.
Right. I mean, but both of those sound, as a person, they sound nice. It's just like, you tell me what you want me to do, I do it, and I'm out.
Right.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
and then also, the other side of that, right? So that's the service delivery, and then on the service consumption side, you have, well, that's not my fault.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
And those are those are not too shabby as far as options to have. Now, of course, the whole point being that, I don't know, to be all Harvard Business Review, right? Like, if you have a team, it's like you want everyone on the team to, like, have responsibility and, as they would say, pitch into something. And then if you have a team of like 10,000 people, that's a little more complicated. But still, you want people to. The organization would rather succeed than other people be blameless.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think that's why I think the culture, and we've talked about this in multiple episodes, where I think one of the cultural foundations or linchpins of the company being successful is the platform or infra or whatever you want to call them, PaaS, to have a very customer centric, product based mindset. Like, that culture of, like, continuous learning, continuous improvement, feedback loops, lean, like that to me is one of the most critical cultural linchpins to, like, the whole thing, to being successful.
Well, so to circle back or loop back or whatever to the original thing. So, I was showing you the charts of number of people on teams, and one thing that maybe was, I might as well bring up a visual, right? One thing that maybe was lost, or not lost, but we didn't get to, is what the team composition is, like the roles that you have on the team. And so this, let me see if I can bring it up again. Whoa, look at that. So it's not here, but in the extended version of it, so like in the actual paper, let me go to another thing. It was missed because it was not on here. But there's another notion of, like, well, if you're developing, if you're building a platform, you have to, like, product manage it. And so there's a question of, like, what are the roles that you have, right? And what was in the paper, again, based on stuff over the years, is like, well, you need a product owner or a product manager, right? And then you probably need, like, some scrum masters, the overhead people involved. And, never minding this exact stuff. Again, we've done enough hand waving to do that. I mean, I think that's another question, is like, so what if you are building your own platform? Well, in both cases, you're running your own platform and then you're building your own platform. It's more than just developers you have. Like, what are these roles in both these situations that you'll be hiring?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is, I would say that is a little bit of the paper showing some aspects of when it was initially authored, because I can't think of a single customer that I've talked to that's doing a platform that has mature, like, serious, like, Scrum or product oversight. Like, it's really, the inmates are sort of running the asylum, so to speak.
Right. So that would be like the ideal state of doing.
That would be an ideal state, and that would be fantastic. I don't see that occurring frequently. And even if I did, I don't. Well, here's the thing. This is a good theoretical question, and I suspect the reason why is because if you had people in there that did this for a living, one of the first things that they would probably bring to everyone's attention was like, this doesn't make sense to do.
Right.
So I think that's one of the challenges. So
Yeah. I get, like you're saying, it is that kind of modeling is the ideal thing that I guess.
To do it right, you would certainly
Right.
Yeah.
Like someone like us who our product is the software that we build, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're like, well, here's here's the ideal way to build a product is, first of all, you need a product manager, right?
Right.
Like you don't just have the manager of the developers or the platform builders. Like you have someone who's got the skill, or someone's who's got the skills of knowing what users do and how to prioritize things based on all this stuff, and
Yep.
what product managers do. And then also, it's interesting about, I mean, whether they're a scrum master or a some
Release
kind
manager or something.
Yeah. It's almost, it's back to the silo thing. Is there, depending on how much you staff it, you have a handful or two handfuls of roles that are like kind of end to end focused. Like they're trying to like not be in one team doing the one miniature silo or big silo thing, and they're kind of trying to look across the whole thing, like you're saying, a release train, right?
Right.
And then, and of course, and the other way, like, I mean, Scrum is what's on there, so we'll talk about that. But also, a Scrum Master is just like, a coach, so someone to kind of go in and help you do things and figure things out. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of like those are functions you would like to have.
Yeah.
For
Exactly.
doing product stuff. Yeah, but so I mean, you don't see roles like that. You were saying, like, is it mostly just technical people, or like what's the structure look like for people who are
So
building
the
these
structure that
platforms?
I normally see is they take they just reallocate many of the same people they've had running infrastructure or platforms or whatever, and they just start allocating them to the DIY thing. And I think the reason why they do that is because one, they think that, I mean, that's the skill set. Like, it's a technical thing to build it. And
Right.
so, and they don't typically have a culture of being, product mindset, product managers, UXers, researchers, right? Like, they're not a part of the organization. And they just, it's a very common sort of trap to fall into. It's like, well, we know what to build. Like, we're going to build it, and then our customers will love it. Like, we know what to build. And it's a technical hill to climb in their eyes. It's not a business driven, user driven thing. It's more, it's the technology. Like, Kubernetes is the future, for example. Like, we should be moving everything to Kubernetes, right? It's open source, it's portable. That's the future. Like, so we know what we need to do. We don't need a product owner to tell us. Like, we know what we have to do.
Right. It's almost like maybe there's a distinction between an engineer and a product manager in this realm, and it's that an engineer knows how to build something, but a product manager knows what to build, and hopefully why they're building it.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And those are, you can have people who can do both.
Yes.
But those are, each of those is a pretty time consuming job.
Yes.
for something as big as the platform, or even just like, I mean, I would imagine even like, when you log in to see recent transactions in a credit card, just seeing the ledger is probably,
Right.
you want to have like separate roles that are doing these things. So
Yeah, I mean, what I would tell everyone to do is, if I was an exec, is to go into any weekly stand up and look at the amount of debate that happens just on the acceptance criteria of a single story, and then imagine doing that successfully at a platform level, and like the difficulty involved. And so, if, as the person trying to build the platform, it's very easy to just say we don't need that. And
Yeah. Yeah, it's more. My dog agrees with you. She's always coming in with the final word. But yeah, it is. It's a question of like how you want to design that process, right? Well, it's not only a question, but do you want your engineers debating this, like you were saying, or do you want to have like more of someone dedicated, another
Well,
silo?
yeah, but I think it's more around just having this unconstrained passion, right? As engineers, we
Yeah,
love
yeah,
to build, and so when is it good enough? What's the feedback? Can I, scope creep? Like all of these things fall into play, which is why you need that good, you know, pressure from the other direction, right? For releasing,
right.
and for improving. So
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of analogously, we wrap this up around 5 p.m. my time, and sometimes I think, should I go and try to cook some dinner, maybe perfect the spinach and the green beans thing and the chicken breast, or should I just order some pizza? It's just like, do I want to spend a lot of time engineering dinner, or do I have the time for it, or do I just want
right.
the outcome?
Yeah.
What analyze the pie chart on that. Well,
So
let's go ahead.
you know what's fun? It's interesting is that I haven't looked at the paper yet. You said there was like 7 things. I feel like we talked about 2.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah. I just wanted to talk about the
yeah.
one. Maybe
Oh,
maybe next
okay.
time we can go over the other. Some of them are. Here, I'll tell you what the 7 things are as a
Okay.
preview. Oh, and then check out this impressive thing, Tony. I didn't make this just for you, but I'm gonna pretend like I did. I made this because I'm gonna demonstrate your principle that builders like to build. Here we are making content. So I like to just putter around and do things gratuitously. Is it valuable? I don't know, but look. Oh,
Oh,
there we
look at
go.
that.
I've engineered that, whether or not the product manager said it was necessary. So, so what we have here, if you look at the table of contents, is
Okay.
we have building a platform for one app, not hundreds, which is all about like
I was just gonna bring that up. Okay.
right. Like people start off, they have one app, but you don't realize like how many what you're going to be doing, the scope
Yep.
involved,
Yes.
and then highly related. Some of these are just like faces of the same problem. Number 2 is underestimating the ongoing investment. That's a lot of what we were looking at. But like the
Yeah.
point there is that like, well, to use the old, if you remember from another time, the doctrine. Like if you break it, you own it. All right.
Right.
Maybe his was more like if you invade it, you own it. But whatever. But like if you build this thing, now you're responsible for it for 10 or 15 years, if not
Right.
longer, right? And ideally, you don't just abandon it. And then we have point 3, assuming the platform is ever done, right? Like, and so like
Right.
that's a similar thing. And then you have number 4, frozen in place by snowflakes, which is to say, a discussion of lock-in, right?
Yeah.
And so always lots of discussions about lock-in and open things. And the point there is that, you know, maybe there's a place where this doesn't happen, but you can, if you build your own platform, now you're locked into that. And then if you take these other things in consideration, that you're not going to like fully staff it, or maybe you will, but that it's difficult to just justify staffing a full platform team many years later, then you're going to be in a creaky old system that doesn't have new
Yes.
features, right?
Yes.
Number 5, retaining skilled people, which is like we saw that this probably still happens now. I don't hear about it as much as I used to, but we would often encounter people who had built their own platform 3 or 4 years ago, often based on Kubernetes, and then the people who did it would leave like 3 to 12 months later for another job, right?
Yeah.
'Cause they had the skill and would leave around.
But it's Kubernetes, so it's easy for anyone to pick up. But that actually isn't the case. There's like so much like company
Right.
specific stuff that gets baked into it that it's
Right,
all
which
it's all tribal knowledge.
it's a little circular, because it's like that's why those people left, because it's
Right.
hard to find people, and they had a track record. And then number 6, keeping up with security and compliance, which is, maybe you could do it, but probably not. Just a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
And like we a couple episodes ago we talked with William about just like keeping track of your images and the work that goes into that. And then number 7, I think this is one that I added, resume-driven development, which you were noting that a little bit.
Yeah, alluded to
Yeah.
that a little bit. Yeah.
And that, I mean, you've kind of covered it. Is engineers want to engineer things, and then also like they chase doing cool stuff, like me putting that little banner up there, and that one was fun to write, because I actually found there's not that many papers, but there's actually one paper, and I'm not a scientist, so who knows the methodology, but they went and did some study and they concluded that like people who are doing resume driven development, those systems are not great. Like they're not as good as they could be. So you can go read the paper. But yeah, I think those are the other six of what we had there. Maybe we'll cover those at some point. But in the meantime, if people want to, they can go download the paper. And I did 3 little videos there going over, I forget which ones, 3 of the points. If people
well, I'm definitely going to go through the paper in more detail, and maybe we can cover 1 or 2 of these other topics in another.
Yeah. We'll see. It'll be good stuff. I'll add one last thing. So I'm giving, I think I mentioned this, but I'm giving a talk over this. I think for the first time, there's this thing called Configuration Management Camp in Ghent, and I'm giving it on February 2nd, 2026.
Okay.
So you only have a week to do anything about it if you're listening. I don't know if you want to book tickets now to come from Atlanta to Ghent, but I've been doing some research for it, and one of the things I like to do is like be like, hey, I'm biased because I get paid if you buy a platform, so let's go see what other people say, and it's interesting to go look at other people's comments on this, and there's pretty. There's a lot of agreement about like it's a good idea to buy a platform or to buy, to put it in the strategy way, to buy something that is not part of your competitive edge or advantage.
Yeah. I do think the sentiment has changed in the last couple of years, where I think Kubernetes has gone from everything should be on Kubernetes to saying, no, like there's a few things, but it's not probably everything. Yeah. So I do think the narrative is starting to change a little bit, which is healthy.
Yeah. So anyways, I'll have to report back. I think we might have to reschedule our thing on Tuesday, if I remember, because I think I'm doing a live podcast recording for one of my podcast software-defined interviews, but we'll figure it out.
All right, well, keep me posted, and good luck with the talk. And
yeah, it should be fun. And if not, then it'll pass.
This too shall pass.
Well, with that, here's been another thing that's passed, which is another episode of Tanzu Catsup. Now, we only list this in YouTube. So if you go to the VMware Tanzu YouTube channel, you can just subscribe to that, and you'll see notifications. We usually do it on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Amsterdam time and 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern, right?
Got it.
And it's usually on Tuesdays. Next week, like I said, probably not. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.
Good to see you, Cote.